Tyrannosaurus rex. We've spent a lot of time on this channel talking about the king, its bone-crushing bite, its size, its reign at the very top of the Cretaceous food chain. And the picture that emerges again and again is of an animal that simply didn't lose. Nothing hunted it, nothing successfully fought it. When T-Rex committed to a kill, that kill happened. So here's a question that sounds simple, but turns out to be genuinely fascinating. Did anything ever actually hurt it? In all the millions of fossils we've recovered, is there a single animal we can point to and say, that one fought back and left its mark on the king? And the internet has plenty of confident answers. You'll hear people say Spinosaurus, thanks to a certain movie, or Giganotosaurus, thanks to a certain other movie. Big, dramatic predators pitted against T-Rex in a heavyweight bout. And I have to tell you right up front, those answers are wrong. Not debatable, just flatly, factually wrong. And I'll explain exactly why in a moment. Because the real answer, the only animal in the entire fossil record with genuine physical evidence of having injured a Tyrannosaurus rex, isn't a giant predator at all. It's a plant eater, one you know very well. And the story of how we figured that out is one of the best pieces of detective work in all of paleontology. Let me start by clearing away the myths, because they matter for understanding why this is so hard. The reason you can't have a Spinosaurus versus T-Rex fight is simple. They never met. They couldn't have met. Spinosaurus lived in North Africa around 100 to 95 million years ago. T-Rex lived in North America around 68 to 66 million years ago. That's a gap of roughly 30 million years and an entire ocean between them. Putting those two in a fight is like staging a battle between a caveman and a Roman legionary, except the gap is 1,000 times bigger. Same problem with Giganotosaurus, South America and about 30 million years too early. These animals are separated from T-Rex by more time than separates T-Rex from us. They were never enemies. They were never anything. They simply never shared a world. So when we go looking for something that actually hurt a T-Rex, we can only look at the animals that genuinely lived alongside it, in its real world, the Hell Creek ecosystem of latest Cretaceous North America. And in that world, the list of things capable of injuring the king is very, very short, because everything else was either too small to matter or was busy being eaten. Except for one animal, Triceratops. Now, on paper, Triceratops is prey. It's a herbivore. It ate plants. It had no interest in hunting anything. And we know for a fact that T-Rex hunted and ate Triceratops. It was one of the king's primary food sources. Triceratops bones turn up covered in T-Rex tooth marks. We've even found evidence of how T-Rex processed their carcasses, tooth scoring the frill and neck to get at the meat. So most of the time, in a meeting between these two, the Triceratops lost. But not always, because Triceratops came armed. And this is where it gets interesting. Think about what a Triceratops actually was. It was a 5 to 9 ton animal, as heavy as the T-Rex hunting it, sometimes heavier. It was built low, broad and powerful, and mounted on the front of its skull were 2 brow horns that, in life, could exceed 1 meter in length, and that's just the bony core. In the living animal, each horn was sheathed in keratin, which would have made it even longer and considerably sharper. So this was a multi-ton animal with 2-meter-long spears pointed directly forward, at exactly the height of a lunging predator's chest, throat, and legs. It was, in effect, a living battering ram. And the great paleontologist Peter Dodson has argued that a healthy bull Triceratops, standing its ground and charging, could absolutely have driven those horns deep enough to inflict fatal wounds on an attacking Tyrannosaurus. That's the theory, based on the anatomy. But theory isn't proof. And for a long time, that's all we had. A compelling argument that Triceratops could have hurt a T-Rex, with no actual fossil showing that it ever did. Paleontologists were clear about what they were missing. To prove it, you'd need either an injured T-Rex bone with damage that only a horn could have made, or a Triceratops that had clearly survived a T-Rex attack, a wound that had healed. And in 1997, in Montana, they found the next best thing to a smoking gun. It's a partial skull of a large adult Triceratops. And when researchers, notably the paleontologist John Happ, examined it closely, they found a whole story written into the bone. First, the outer third of the animal's left brow horn was simply gone, snapped off. Second, on what remained of that horn, and on the skull nearby, were a series of marks. Cone-shaped punctures and long parallel scrapes. And when they measured those marks, this is the detective work, they found the cone-shaped indentations matched the tooth tips of a large tyrannosaur. And the gaps between the parallel scrapes, about 65 millimeters apart, matched the tooth spacing of Tyrannosaurus rex specifically. T-Rex was the only predator in that environment that could have made those marks. This Triceratops had, without question, been bitten in the face by a T-Rex. Its horn had been bitten clean off. And now, the single most important detail in this entire video. The detail that changes everything. The wounds had healed. The bone around the bite marks showed clear signs of infection and, crucially, of healing and regrowth. New bone had grown over the injuries, and that only happens in a living animal. A dead animal's bones don't heal. A scavenged carcass just shows clean bite marks and nothing more. Healing means this Triceratops was alive when it was bitten. It means it was attacked by a Tyrannosaurus rex, took a bite to the face that snapped off part of its horn, and then it got away. It survived. And not just for a few days. The extensive healing indicates it lived on for months, possibly years, after the encounter. This is the fossil that proves beyond reasonable doubt that a T-Rex attacked an adult Triceratops head-on, and the Triceratops won that exchange, or at least fought it to a draw and lived to tell the tale. Now, I want to be scrupulously honest with you here, because that's what this channel is for. This fossil proves the Triceratops survived a T-Rex attack. Does it by itself prove the Triceratops injured the T-Rex back? Not directly. We don't have that specific T-Rex's skeleton to check for horn wounds. And I won't pretend we do. But here's why Triceratops is still the answer to our question. The only animal with a real, evidence-based claim to having injured the king. Think about what that healed skull actually tells us. It tells us these two animals engaged in close, head-on physical combat. Not a clean ambush where the T-Rex bit once and the Triceratops died, but a genuine struggle, up close, face to face, that the Triceratops survived. And a Triceratops in that position is not a passive victim. It's a cornered, 5-ton animal with 2-meter-long spears fighting for its life against something biting at its head. When an animal like that survives a head-on fight, it is because it was fighting back, thrashing, shoving, and driving those horns at the soft parts of its attacker. It is essentially impossible for a T-Rex to get that close, bite that horn, and walk away untouched by an animal built like a medieval siege weapon and fighting for survival. The healed Triceratops skull is the physical proof that these head-on battles happened, that they were survivable, and therefore that the T-Rex's face, throat, chest and legs were right there, in range of those horns during the fight. And it lines up with everything else we know. Remember Sue, the great T-Rex, riddled with healed injuries, an animal that lived a long and violent life, full of wounds that it survived. The Cretaceous was not a world where the king strolled around untouched. It was a brutal, dangerous place where even the apex predator got hurt, healed, and got hurt again. And of all the animals sharing T-Rex's world, only one was built to give as good as it got. Not the raptors, too small. Not the duckbills, no weapons, built to flee. Not Ankylosaurus, which was a defensive fortress the T-Rex mostly avoided rather than fought. Only Triceratops routinely stood and fought the king head-on, at close range, with lethal weapons pointed forward. And we have the healed skull to prove those fights were real and survivable. So the answer to what's the only dinosaur known to have injured a T-Rex is Triceratops. And it earns that title not through a myth or a movie, but through one battered, healed skull dug out of the Montana dirt that records an actual, survived battle between the two most famous dinosaurs that ever lived. Every artist's depiction you've ever seen of a T-Rex and a Triceratops squaring off, the horns lowered, the predator wary, isn't fantasy. It's grounded in that fossil. It really happened. And I think there's something poetic in that. Because we've spent so long crowning T-Rex as the undisputed king, the animal that never lost. But the fossil record quietly tells a more interesting story. The king did lose sometimes, and when it did, the animal that beat it wasn't a bigger, scarier predator from a movie. It was a plant eater, a herbivore that wanted nothing more than to eat ferns in peace, but that came so well armed and fought so hard when cornered that it could send the most powerful predator in the history of the planet limping away with a story to tell. Triceratops didn't hunt the king. It didn't want to fight the king. But when the king came for it, at least one Triceratops looked those jaws in the face, fought back, and won. And it walked away with a broken horn and a healed scar. The only trophy in the entire fossil record proving that even T-Rex could be made to bleed. Never underestimate a cornered herbivore, especially one with two swords on its face. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep looking up.